Just going to wait for the rest of the IT to be set up. All right, YouTube's live as well.
3, 2, 1. You're live here as well.
All right, great.
Facebook.
Okay, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and join me for our webinar for the Crowdcube campaign. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Normally what happens in these webinars is people are joining over sort of 5 or 10 minutes. So Julius, who's helping me out here, will keep adding people into the call. And while you're sitting around there, think of the questions that you want to ask, and the best way to answer them is in the chat function. So we'll be taking questions off of Facebook, YouTube, and on the webinar. And Julius is running both. Last time we had well over 100 people just on the webinar and a lot more on the other platforms. So we didn't get to all the questions. Today we will try to get to all the questions. I will just add Roger Shepard to the call. So again, thanks everybody for being on the call. John Klinkhammer, I saw your name there. Great. Welcome to the call, John. Again, we can't have everybody's audio on, otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear what's going on. So just chat your questions in the chat box and I'll be sure to answer them. Florian, are you joining us?
Absolutely.
All right. Our CFO, Florian, is also joining us here if you have any financial or legal related questions. So before we get started on this whole webinar, it'll go for just about an hour. I've been spending a lot of time sort of listening to people, having a look at, what are the comments online and trying to get a picture into how people perceive this product and try to work out how to communicate it in a way that people can really understand the strategy of the product, the unique product market fit, the way we do the operational model, and so forth. And I thought of a really simple metaphor. I want to paint a picture, and I want people watching just to take a moment and imagine if Apple were to build an electric car. If Apple were to build an electric car, what kind of design language would they use? This is an Apple mouse. What kind of design language changes would they make to make sure that it was really a distinctly different product? Can you add people as they come in here? Add them on there. And how would it differ to how previous cars were designed? How would the design language be different so that it was really distinct? Now, if you look at this mouse, a lot of people look at the Apple mouse and they say, oh, it's not ergonomic. But if you try it and you get used to it, then there's really no turning back. That's what I've found. But it's a very distinctly different product, and it is certainly not built for everybody. So how would they do an electric car? How would the design be different, and how would the design be distinct? What kind of lines would they use? Because that's kind of this future that we want to live in, right? I think that kind of car would work on a really great scale. What kind of engineering criteria would they use? What kind of engineering criteria would they design for? Would they design for what people believe they want? Like if I believe I need a week-long battery on my phone, is that what they would design? Or would they design for what they know you need based on your usage patterns, right? Enough battery so that it fits in my life and it uses everything, hits all the usage points. They would, of course, design it to be super scalable. They would use an integrate, not innovate policy, as they did. When Sony Ericsson did the first teardown of the first iPhone, the engineers reported to the board that this was an inferior product and Sony Ericsson had nothing to worry about because all of their components were relatively inferior. Keep adding people on there.
Oh, let's just present.
Oh. Yeah. Just keep an eye on that one. All of the components that they were using were relatively inferior to the top smartphones that were out there. So what they've done is focused on integrating systems that could be safe and scalable while focusing intensely on the total customer experience, that total digital first experience, the magic of the product, the magical way these are designed together and they fit together just perfectly and fit into your lives just perfectly. What operational model would they use? Would they try to build a lot of value in the company by owning a lot of big buildings, bricks and mortar operations? Or would they focus on the total customer lifetime value, the brand assets, the customer data, and the total brand IP, and just use digital platforms to maintain ownership and control? Of course they would. So if you can understand the place where we're trying to go is somewhat similar. That vehicle doesn't yet exist, but there's a lot of cues to show us why it could exist. If Apple built an electric car, would it be the cheapest electric car? Absolutely not. And they wouldn't be interested in building that cheapest electric car. And we are not interested in building the cheapest electric car. The people that are not price sensitive go out and buy an iPhone and own it. And it's a very expensive phone. But for everybody else that is price sensitive, it's still available to them for a small monthly fee. So our goal is not to build the cheapest electric car, but our goal is to make it available to everybody. No sound, no picture on the join me. Hi, we have an issue here. Sorry, we just have a little IT problem here. How are you talking? Listen, computer. Huh. So you guys cannot currently hear me on the join me. Is that correct? Locally muted. You can, you do. Roland, you do. Roger Shepard, you do. Can hear you but not see you. Present doesn't make sense. Let me see.
I think they just have to unmute on their computers.
Right. You might have to unmute on your computer. Now you can see me. All right. On your computers. All right. All righty. Now you can see. Sorry, I didn't have the camera turned on there. All right. So that's a bit of a background. Just an opportunity to imagine how the car can change and how the strategy can be to get that to market and to attract people to our ultimate goal, which is attracting them to more resource efficient mobility. We can't just say your car is dirty, you should be buying something new. We have to make something attractive. And attractive is not the cheapest. Attractive is the best, but we still find pricing models to make it available to everybody. I'm going to go through and start answering some of the questions now. I hope that was fun. Felix Veg said, sexy car for sexy people. Couldn't agree more. But not for everybody, but certainly for sexy people. Mosonyi Philip, aloha. When we get the possibility buying the car in Austria. You know, from afar, I thought it said Australia, where I'm originally from. Austria, in terms of market approach, so we'll start in the UK, Northern Europe, Germany, and so forth, in terms of our market approach or main marketing efforts. But still, organically, people right across Europe, obviously thousands of people know about the car, have already pre-ordered the car. And if you're in that group, obviously you can get delivery. The most important thing is, do we have sufficient after-sales and servicing infrastructure in Austria? Currently, we have very robust after-sales and servicing in the UK, the Nordics, Germany, France, right across to Poland, and in the south. We should have a solid partner in Austria. Let us get back to you on that one. By the time 2019 comes around and we show the production cars, sure, we should have all those deals finalized. But the partners we have are covering the rest of Europe. I wonder if you have a Norauto in Austria.
Sure.
Not sure.
Likely a similar partner.
Yeah, somewhat similar there. But otherwise, yeah, we can certainly get them down there. So thank you for your question. Richard Latham, when's the 4-seater version in the UK to buy, please? So what we're going to do is conduct the development in parallel. So we're doing the 2-seater and the 4-seater in parallel. There is something like a 16-week delay. Sally Pawlowski, who's on the call, can add a little bit more specific detail or granular detail to that. I do my best to represent people that know a whole lot better than me what this challenge entails to get these production cars made. But effectively, the plan is to show both cars by December next year, the pre-production model of the 2-seater, and if we have enough time, we'll have the pre-production model of the 4-seater. But at the very least, you'll see an almost pre-production ready model of the 4-seater. The marketing tech stack will be set up, and you'll be able to go ahead and place an order. So that way, we'll know your delivery deadline, and all your after sales and servicing questions will be ready to go. So to cut a long story short, December next year, but don't expect delivery until the end of 2020. Next, and thank you for your question, Richard. Julian Mensa, how do you expect consumers to view your car in comparison to other EVs? I don't know if you saw this big spiel at the beginning, Julian, but basically I was kind of going through the way that how we kind of see cars, including electric cars today, and the direction that we want to take in terms of minimalism in the exterior design, minimalism in the interior design, a digital-first experience, optimized for your actual usage patterns, a new logic, a new kind of emotional pull with the car, and a very specific attention to detail right across every single customer touch point. So I think other people optimize for maybe the cheapest electric car or the fastest electric car. We optimize very, very specifically for the total customer experience, the usability, how you interact with it, and how it fits into your life. Doing that thing really differently is how things can really change. All right, Sally Pawlowski has no sound, but other people can hear, right? Sounds like you're able to hear. Unmute. All right. Okay, so Robert asked the question, what partners are you working with? And Sally Pawlowski has answered, Robert, we are working with various partners and contractors, depend which area you're talking about specifically. Some examples, obviously you guys should all know about a foundation partnership we have with Siemens. That's what the entire PLM system is built on, the complete end-to-end seamless development platform. So the PLM means product lifecycle management, basically everything from the sketch right through to the integration, the engineering, the geometry, safety systems, crash, simulations, right through to the digital twin of the production plant, and right through to the product on the road and right to the end of its life. And then something called MindSphere, which is a layer on top of there. So that partner is absolutely crucial for us for creation of this digital IP, the opportunity we have to go and set these factories up in other locations. Other than that, I mean, you can see a big bunch of list of them. Tele2 is a great partner here. Deloitte's been helping Flow out and the team. PricewaterhouseCoopers, a lot of the senior management kind of style. Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA, KUKA Robotics, I mean, ABB, a lot of stuff. Unipart is our, I can say, like really confirmed partners. Unipart for our global supply chain. They're effectively a logistics company, and this is really a logistics play when you talk about turnkey, ready-made subsystems for the car and a vehicle that can effectively be assembled in 16 minutes in any part of the world because it's pretty much ready built. That is quite literally a logistics play more than anything, and a supply chain play. Another great partner who I was meeting with today is a company called Mobivia. They own a lot of after sales and servicing, maintenance side of things. So that's Norauto, Speedy, Midas, right across. They have service centers from France right across to Poland, Spain, Italy, and so forth. In our approach to maintenance and servicing, it's not as often people ask the question, and I say, yeah, we've got a partner, they take care of it all. But it's quite a bit more than that. Mobivia Group has worked with this Norwegian electric car called Think. So they were right through that entire process, and a lot of other ones. So they came here today and brought a big thick book, their senior management, and they're basically, we're working out how to plan ahead for the problems that can arise. You know, they have a huge amount of data, so that we can use a little lateral thinking and work out how to optimize, obviously, on cost, availability of parts. You know, instead of taking 2 hours to solve a problem, it can take 2 minutes, according to them, if you design it right. So really looking at where are the hot points for car servicing and maintenance and things breaking down, and kind of guiding us and working together to have a really a great digital system. Basically, you'll have an opportunity to opt in to the program, which has a data transfer if you decide to opt in, and then we'll be able to always keep an eye on your car and make sure if there's anything ever wrong with it, our partners will know ahead of time and make sure it's fixed. Unless you're on some kind of subscription model, then it's just a simple swap, of course. A lot of great partners. Community building is fundamental to this entire thing, and communities include the partners that we have. Jeffrey van Vechten, is the Netherlands in that Euro launch? Absolutely. I can't comment. Do you know how many Dutch people have bought the car or invested in the company? Quite a lot.
Invested quite a lot. I think they're fourth largest investor group.
I'm not sure where in the Netherlands you are, Jeffrey, but if you want a great metaphor for why we need to change our thinking within the space of mobility, when I walk down the street in Amsterdam and I see a Hummer parked in the middle of Amsterdam, or a Tesla trying to squeeze its way through Amsterdam, I think it's a great metaphor for how the streets of Asia are, the streets of Europe. Singapore has a peak car problem. What we need to do is deliver something that fits in the city better. It's much more agile, fits in your life better, but doesn't ask you to compromise on things like safety, experience, build quality, ride height, visibility, the awareness, the features, the social badge, and the status symbol, if that is important to you, depending on what country, culture you're part of. So yeah, Netherlands is in that Euro launch. I think it's in the first phase. So yeah, we plan to be all down there. Sid Thacker, will your car compete with Dyson's EV? That seems to be a premium family sedan, so it's more of a Tesla competitor. We're kind of a different market. Also, if I look at their strategy of producing in Singapore, it's clear that Singapore and the Asian market is a lot more squarely in their focus. But I think over time, our paths will surely cross. Yeah, over time. And ultimately, if we need to really transition a lot of the world onto electric mobility, 2 or 3 players is not going to cut it. What we need is a lot more selection, a lot more options. Right now, today, there are hundreds of different options for a combustion engine vehicle, and we need to have those same options in the electric car market. We're talking about a real systemic shift here, and our contribution is obviously the hyper-efficient, agile for inner cities, digital-first experience. That's our position of meaningful differentiation. Julius, you have a question from YouTube.
Yeah, from Sergio. He's asking, what's the after-sales strategy? Are you guys having dealers? What's the question there?
All right, thank you for your question on YouTube, Sergio. Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned about Mobivia and Norauto. In Sweden here, people know about Mekonomen in the the UK, every person in the UK is within 10 minutes of a Unipart service center. So we don't have the distribution in the same way. We don't use distribution centers in the same way, because part of the strategy of the company, and especially in the early research days, was to really look comprehensively at the entire value chain and work out where are the inefficiencies that we want to solve. And the dealership network, that is a 15% margin. You know, it's a 10% margin of inefficiency. They do create a lot of value, but in this next era we're going to, where we can sell cars online, deliver them via a partner such as, you know, Mekonomen, Unipart, one of them guys, we can really make that super lean. We can make that super lean and super available to everybody at every time. And with the data transfer that you opt into, obviously we comply to all the GDPR laws. You can really, we want to really optimize this kind of Unity health plan or UCare, so that you can opt in, pay a small amount of money for peace of mind, and know that you can get your car serviced absolutely anywhere. And as a company, we can do it much more efficiently, much more lean. So what we want to do is provide a better product, better service, and make it much leaner and more scalable. Thank you for your question, Sergio. Hope that answers it. So, Sid Thacker, will there be a autonomous rideshare platform? Sid, it is such an exciting time to be alive, especially in this place. Autonomous car tech is coming very fast. However, what we need to do is design for where the puck is going. We need to design the architecture and the system and the way in which our products interact with society, so that we're well set up to do really well in that autonomous car era. As you guys know, we've got a range of sensors on the car, but our strategy is really to create as much value from those sensors today. So self-parking, you know, being able to self-charge, being able to give you co-pilot features to make the ride safer, but not necessarily level 5 autonomy. We would definitely want to be first. I think maybe within 2-3 years, we'll have on-road mobility as a service, like car on demand testing. We have been doing it for the last 2 years, as many of you know, although that was really as a way to understand the limitations of the technology, the potential, how it interacts with society. Now that we have suppliers for all of the autonomous systems and the computers and so forth, and now it gets really serious. It gets really serious about when is the strategy to start making full autonomous cars. We are participating. We will not be first, but we might be second. I think you'll find what we need to do is, with our mobility as a service, do the proof of concept next year, do the pilot studies the year after, and the pilot studies are planned for Sweden, UK, San Francisco, probably one in Lille in France. Adelaide wants one, and there's a bunch of other people that want one. So we got to work some of that stuff out. But at the very least, it's them 4 places. We use that to gather data, and primarily the data we want to gather is data related to pricing. How much value do we create? How much pricing do we create? So we can really find a sustainable path to scaling that mobility as a service. And when you have those connected devices out there on the road with autonomous car tech, then you can sensibly transition into the autonomous car era, which we're certainly setting up for. But we're not going to make claims like you hear sometimes out there about level 5 autonomy next year. I think we have to be sensible about this. It's a very big challenge, but I think we'll certainly get there. Julian Mensa, sorry, I've just logged on. Next question, how do you plan to disrupt the market when competition is growing very strong in this area, especially the number of Chinese EV manufacturers already hitting the 200 mark? I'm not sure what you mean 200 mark. Oh, the amount of Chinese EV manufacturers? No, there's well over 1,000. I think there's maybe 2,000 of them. There are thousands of people making electric cars. There are thousands of people that can make, copies or something like that. So what we have to do is really stay in our swim lane and become very good at what we do. Obviously, brand story is critical, the design elements, the fundamental logic, and making sure we lock down the IP in different areas and do it really efficiently. There are a couple of other ways that we can compete, but I don't think it's good to say on here. Basically, there are a lot of Chinese manufacturer of electric cars, but not everybody wants to buy those ones. Hi, I have two questions, but thank you for your question, Julian. It's a relevant question. Ian Stuckbury. Hi, I have two questions. One, can you talk a bit more about what you as the differences in use case between 2- and 4-seater versions? Do you see the 4-seat as being mainly a sole car for many families, or just a 4-seater, sole car for many families, or just a commuter for people who have to ferry? Obviously, the 2-seater is really about that daily urban commute, working around the city. Many of you would already know that the average occupancy of a vehicle trip is 1.2 people. That's across Sweden. I think it's even lower in the US. So again, designing for what people think they need, which is the option cost they pay for a 5- or 8-seater car that they maybe really leverage what it can do once a year, or really designing for that use case specific. So what we see when we look at a lot of, you'll see in our business plan, if you've read it, there's a page there from McKinsey about the trends towards more use case specific mobility. So that's obviously what the 2-seater is about, and it's ideal for mobility as a service and so forth. The 4-seater is a result of a lot of people who like the brand, follow the company, demand a 4-seater car. It totally makes sense to build one. As the first family car, in fact, there's a lot of people that want it as a first family car. It is designed by Marcelo. He's got several kids and a lot of other people that have kids. So it's also a little different. It has a lot more storage space, things like that. So yeah, it could well be the first family car as well, if people so choose. The 2-seater is, of course, really the second family car. Felix Veg, is it competitive to a 4x4 all-wheel car? We have a lot of snow near Black Forest, Germany. How is the traction? Do you have special electric technologies for this case? I think e-cars offer new possibilities because of e-motors. Yeah, you're talking about different methods of traction control, of course. I wonder if Sally's on board here. Obviously, we do. Sally can't hear me. So yeah, I mean, obviously we do snow testing. We're from Sweden as well. It doesn't make sense to make a vehicle that doesn't perform well in Norway and Sweden and so forth. There is more finer adjustment of traction control, torque vectoring, all that kind of thing. We are doing feasibility studies for a 4x4 model. Basically, you would have the main traction motors at the rear and an option for 2 small hub motors at the front, just for traction purposes, just for icy conditions and so forth. So they're not giving you a lot of propulsion. They're just giving you extra traction. So yes, this is super important to us. And yes, I think we can deliver something great. Do you have a question, Julius?
Yes, I have. There's a lot of questions about the 4-seater that you mentioned. And there's also a lot of questions about like our plans overseas. So both India and Asia, and then the US.
Pick a question, or can you summarize a question?
Yeah, so like in general, what's our plan for overseas business in Asia? In India, there's a lot of questions from Rideshare. Is the car coming to India, for example? They've seen it there before.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of demand for the vehicle in India. We know that. It is a really big challenge if you're preparing to deliver a certain amount of cars in a country, and then we did a lot of work in India, and it turns out some of these big car companies are saying we can do 500,000 units a year eventually in India. That is a very big project. It has to have localized supply chain, localized manufacturing. So we're not going to get to India next year. Give us a couple of years. I think realistically, realistically, what we need to do in the company is transition to new financial paradigms and new intellectual paradigms in which we have enough resources to really focus on the India question. I think, look, realistically, let's target 2021 at best. But bearing in mind, there's a lot of people that have already ordered the car that will be importing it, and it will be illegal to use on the roads. One of the other questions with the Indian roads and the Indian cars, it has to be purpose built. I said on the last webinar that the Volkswagen Golf had to do a recall because the horns, people beat the horns. If you've been to Delhi, they couldn't survive the beating. so you know, they had to do a recall. So you really have to design for the road conditions and so forth. I'm sure they're full aware of that. So it's a bit bigger project. We really have to stay focused now. What we're doing here is getting that pilot plant set up. We're in discussions with several other locations. Everybody knows the Swedish production plant location that we've been working on for some time. We have a lot of other discussions. India is a really big challenge because it's such a big market, but there's a lot of simpler markets to get into. For assembly, Sweden, I'm going to see the Prime Minister of Georgia next week. I mean, Mexico is another one. I mean, there's Adelaide, Australia. There's a big list of different countries. Basically, what we do is have first phase assembly plants where we contract to contractors in a place like Sweden, a bit more close to home. We can be further up the value chain. Or a place like China, Greater China, where there's really no way we can be contracting manufacturers and being so deep into the value chain. So in a case like that, we license the entire platform. So we have discussions with a couple of the big guys down there, like BYD and Mitsubishi and in Japan and so forth. I don't know. I got to be careful with what I say. It's not the number one flaw is not having a filter. Basically, we do this pilot plant. It can be replicated in other places, but it can also be licensed. We maintain, as said, ownership and control of the entire process so that we can really ensure the quality is delivered to the customer. And then, of course, there's the brand assets and the marketing tech stack. So it's a question of, do we contract manufacturers like Sweden? They take care of all the production, or do we license the entire platform? That is what we do there. Let me just check Facebook. So that's the basic plan. But sure, I mean, the car is designed for people in Japan. Love this. Obviously, Korea. We've spent a lot of time. I used to live in Beijing, so it was super obvious that Singapore as well, they want to have a premium EV that fits in their cities. All the premium ones are quite large. They still want a status symbol. They still want safety. They like the Swedish aura of quality, but the battery can't be such a burden on the infrastructure. You still have to be able to charge it. This is a 48-volt system, so you can get it in and charge it in the streets of Beijing or anything like that. So partially inspired by that. Felix Veg, thank you for direct customer talk. No problem. Alexandre Rodrigo Kotz, hi, I'm from Brazil. Is it in your plans to launch in other countries? It certainly is, as I've been talking about. Brazil, we've had some discussions in Brazil. There's some great innovations. But again, we have to really stay focused. I think when we get into a new financial paradigm, new intellectual paradigm, which we do over the next year, we'll have enough bandwidth to put people on questions like that. It's a question of the first assembly locations are based on the market, based on whether or not we feel we can execute on the operations with a minimal degree of risk for the entire operation. And of course, there has to be finance available from the local location. So we don't want to start with Brazil or India, but definitely over the next few years, that can be certainly interesting. Some people that have been asking questions for, when is that next assembly plant? And they're also asking questions about financing. Obviously, that next assembly plant involves a financial commitment and so forth. This is something we absolutely cannot answer now, but it's because we're preparing a much bigger announcement for Davos, the World Economic Forum in Davos, January 24th. Keep an eye on that. I'd love to make a bunch of announcements now. However, we have to do it at the right time with the right message. It would be great for this campaign, but unfortunately, you have to wait. Julian Mensa, thank you for your answers. Thank you for your questions, Julian. Sid Thacker, when will the first orders be physically delivered and which markets are prioritized? First orders to be delivered to the wide population. There'll be like beta test cars and stuff. I'm getting one soon. There's some investors and so forth, beta testers that will get them sooner. But for the wider population, you can expect them in the end of 2020. Prioritized countries is the UK, Nordics, and Germany. So Northern Europe and the UK. Obviously, the UK will probably be first because of the factory being there. But yeah, we'll start getting deliveries across Northern Europe around the same time, hopefully end of 2020. Johan Westlund. Johan, hi. With the move to Silverstone, do you have a plan for all possible outcomes of Brexit and the possible impact on exporting and importing and other aspects of the business operations after Brexit? Can you share the details to current and future investors? Absolutely, great question. We don't have a Brexit-proof model, but we have a Brexit-resilient model, you could say. So obviously, as I said, it's heavily dependent on maintaining ownership and control through the PLM platform, the digitalization of an old industry, the digitalization of the product and the production. And that allows us to get the right competence from the right place at the right time, to de-risk, to reduce costs, to have the right competence and get it done on a timescale meaningful to the expectations that we've set out there in the market. What that means is we set up the pilot plant, and in the event of a hard Brexit, that plant will just be servicing the UK market, which is kind of tying on to what Sid Thacker said. In the event of a hard Brexit, really it's the UK people that'll get it first, depending on the numbers. And in a hard Brexit, the only thing we export is their knowledge in the form of digital IP, which can then be used to set up the next production plants or license a vehicle in other places. Localized assembly is 100% what our plan is, and the supply chain is a global supply chain. So it's not a UK supply chain. It's UK brains. It's UK engineering. Obviously, it's global engineering as well, but it's really UK with the engineering integration. They're very good at composite production. Weight, roll resistance, and drag coefficient are three things they're very good at in Silverstone. We need that. We store that in the digital IP, and in a hard Brexit, we just export a data file. How many countries have shown interest to start producing Unity? Thank you for your question, Matt Flom. I mean, it's really a geopolitical thing, right? I mean, think about a country like, let's just think about Adelaide, Australia. So just to go to the far end of the world, they had car production as a big part of our history in Australia, but now all car manufacturing has left the country. They have all of this talent, all of this infrastructure, all these facilities, but they got no car production. So if we come along and say, hey, it's not a $2 billion car production plant. We got a digital file, digital twin of the product, homologated for your market. It's a 24-month project, and it's about 200 million euros. All of a sudden, it's feasible to have this factory in a box set up in many different places. So India, China and Japan on a licensing agreement, the United States of America, obviously the UK, obviously Sweden, the Emir of Dubai, Georgia, as I said, I'm going there next week. Then there's been a lot of, this is if it's the government coming forward with people with, money back demand. Other than that, people all over the world want to have a car produced. And as I said, the decision will be based on market criteria, execution for operational items criteria, and you know, it's expensive. So they well, it's not expensive, but relatively it's low cost, but there needs to be capital available. And typically that comes in the form of an upfront feasibility study payment that helps us do the feasibility study in that location, gets first right of refusal on a few things, and also exclusivity typically they want in the market. And then we can go through, do that study, and then do a bigger study and ultimately execute on the factory. I'll go back to the webinar people. It looks like there's a lot of questions here. Robert, okay, looks like there's a chat here. Robert, we're working on a bunch of partners with various partners and contractors. Production mainly, but any key partners that are crucial for success? Are there any plans you are missing still to succeed in your, are there any you are still missing to succeed with your plans? Okay, so it's a question of partners and are there any missing partners? I can't speak for Sally's side of the business. She's currently down in Munich talking to KUKA Robotics. Obviously, there's several robotics partners that you can talk to. She's talking to all of them. I mean, there's a lot of partners in here. In terms of what's not signed, I guess there's still more partners that would be needed. But luckily, we're good at attracting all the good guys. Dropping off on Join Me, going over to YouTube. I get video there. Thanks, Roger Shepard. Yeah, Sally replied, production Unipart, robotics KUKA, Swisslog. Tobias Duske, I think you were on our last webinar. Thanks for coming back again. So the concept is to give repair instruction to any garages, or do they need to get a certification from you? We're working alongside, as I said, obviously Unipart. We work very closely with Sally and her team in the UK, work very closely with Unipart, and we work very closely with a bunch of other ones. As said, Mobivia guys, which is Norauto, right across France, they were here, their senior management all day, drilling down into the plan. And it's really, you're right, repair instruction would be given, but we're really co-developing it with them. Our engineers, Sally and her team, obviously have to write all the technical documentation, the service manual, but we want to involve them in the process now, which is what we're doing, to see how can we innovate across this to make servicing not such an expensive burden, a painful burden that you have to go and you void your warranty if you don't do it right. How can we make it easier? How can we make it more cost effective? And for the company, how can we take a look at their data? I mean, they gave some great strategies today with just simple decisions you can make in the development of a production car that solve huge problems down the line for servicing in terms of cost, availability of parts, and so forth. So yeah, to get a certification from us, yeah, there'd be some certification training, potentially a couple of special tools needed as well. But that's early days yet. We're still in the process of developing that with our partners. Any questions I missed? Do you have a question from YouTube?
Yes. Torsten Longemann is asking, what will be the service concept? He lives in a small town in Germany, and who will do the maintain on the Unity? So,
another maintenance question.
Yeah.
As said, we have service partners right across Europe. Germany, not a high density in Germany yet, but we will by December 29. We have a very high density of partners in France, the UK. Everyone's 10 minutes from a partner, the Nordics, and so forth. So Mobivia does have service centers right across to Poland, but we want to make sure we have partners that are only 5-10 minutes away at all times. So basically, you can tell it, or who's watching, what was his name again? Torsten. You effectively buy the car online, then when it's ready to be delivered, you'll be directed to a local service center. So again, Unipart in the UK or Mekonomen here in Sweden. So if I bought one online, I would get directed to a delivery date at a Mekonomen. Go and arrive there. You'll be greeted by a person in a Unity shirt. They'll give you a quick tutorial, run through the car, run through the setup, take a quick test drive, and you'll be told to come back to us if you need any repairs, unless you want a upgraded customer care package where we deliver it to your door. So yeah, after sale and servicing, there's a lot of inefficiencies we can solve, a lot of ways we can make it better, and that's something we're focusing on with a lot of really smart people from these companies, which is great. Sid Thacker, what is your exit strategy, if any? Well, Flo's been sitting here, quiet as pie.
Finally,
Obviously,
get to say
I like
something.
to talk a lot. So.
Great. Well, in terms of exit strategy, I mean, of course, at this current stage, we're not in the position to go into any specifics. I think together with the board and the leadership of the company, we reevaluate all the options at all times. Naturally, for a company like ours, especially as Lewis mentioned earlier, the capital intensiveness that is going to be needed in the future, an IPO would be the natural way to go. Most likely at an international, well-known stock exchange. Of course, for startups like ours, we attract a lot of inbound interest, both from partners, but of course also from competitors, investors, etc. So the idea of a trade sale is, of course, never off the table. But I think we all believe in the concept that we have, and one of the two is certainly a likely option. Whereas we always look to deliver the best possible outcome for our investors.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, in the event of a trade sale, there's a lot of people involved in there. But certainly, my objective is not to try to sell the company. But we've had, I'll leave. We have had some discussions, but I'll leave it there. Rolf Bragg, you should also build a bigger car, or maybe we should just build smaller machines. We do have a lot of different thoughts in the company. Your two-seater, four-seater. Sally and her team would love to build a smaller SUV. And what we'll do is get these two vehicles out there, gather a lot of data, find out what the people want, find out what our people need, what the cities need, and then we'll develop a strategy. But if I could today, what I think is we should maybe go smaller. I mean, you can look at right down to scooters today. These guys are getting huge investments, much bigger than the SUV guys are getting. And the world really needs energy efficient, resource productive mobility that makes sense. So maybe we should go smaller. But thank you for your question. Your voice is heard, Rolf Bragg. There are people that in the company that are interested in doing a small SUV. And I used to have a two-door Suzuki Grand Vitara that was jacked up. So I would love to do something like that. That would be cool. In future, when we got time and focus, don't worry, we're staying focused here. But it would be cool to make a beach machine, a little buggy. That would be great. But at the moment, we have to stay focused. Robert, how is the financing round on Crowdcube going? Yeah, it's going pretty good. I think if you look at the data, top performers, if either a group of the top performers, if not the top performer, I don't know, check it out. Really good data going on there. We just put this campaign for this end of the year thing. We put this campaign together, part of the UK thing, threw it on there. It's a great branding exercise, great community building exercise, and great to be connecting with a whole lot more people. So on that note, if you haven't seen the crowdfunding campaign, go to www.crowdcube.com/unity. You should be able to see the link. There should be a link in the bio around this. Go and check it out. Nice campaign page, nice video. Share it with all your friends and make a pledge if you're interested to be part of this awesome little club we got here, community. It's only with the support of people like you that this company gets, starts to make sense, and the product makes sense. And yeah, we can't do this without people like yourselves. A lot of it's about learning everything we can. Another question, Julius.
Yes, from Robert Shepard. He thinks our Unity, the two-seater model, looks like is similar to the Smart 2, and he wonders if you can explain the competitive advantages.
Yeah, it's similar to a Smart 2. Smart 2 is a really nice car. Great car, energy efficient, safe, similar pricing, maybe a little higher, a bit more on the pricing for the EV Smart 2. Obviously, our concept for the two-seater is heavily designed for one driver. As I said, you have the average occupancy of a vehicle trip is 1.2 people. But if you're designing naturally for two people side by side, is a very, very different experience to if you're just designing for one person with visibility the whole way around, the ride height, the visibility, and the space around you that you could expect in an SUV, but sitting in a vehicle that's much more agile. A 6'5" investor of ours fits into that car with space above his head. So a